We are live. Welcome to Serious and Sober. Today we have Wesley Cunningham Closs, or maybe just Wes, depending on how many syllables you want to say. He is a beloved friend, roommate. I'm not writing a eulogy. He is. We've lived together for like a year. We worked together. Co-workers. For I know. As soon as I started, I'm like, oh, beloved Wesley, and who is alive, who's very much alive, despite the appearance. Anyway, I'll go back to my professional introduction. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Today we are here with Wes Cunningham Closs, and we are going to be discussing linguistics, language, and the impact that they have on the trans community, as well as our own trans journeys. So as I mentioned in my eulogy, Wes is a witch, and I also, I'm dabbling, I'm exploring, we'll see. Anyway, so we both practice tarot, so I decided that was a good connection to do for the questions. So I have the major arcana cards, and we are going to shuffle them, and each card represents a question, and I tried to connect the meaning to the card to the question as best I could. Sometimes I really stretch, so if you want to question me, feel free. I will try to explain my way out of it. Anyway, Wes, hi.
Hello. It's weird that like we're roommates and yet you're not here.
I know. Yeah. We let's talk about that, because like last week I was where I am now with Rebecca Banky, was my guest from last week, and that's because I am isolating there because Wes went back to work, and work is scary.
Yeah, it wasn't that scary. No one was there, but
like I know that. I just
the more annoying part is that I have to walk to work, which well, I don't have to. I could take transit, but I'm too paranoid to take transit.
Yeah, honestly, I was literally brainstorming ways. I'm like, maybe there's a way I still can drive west to work. And I'm like, that's breaking isolation. That's literally why I'm here. And I'm in Hamilton and you're in Oakville, which is just, that would be dedication. How much would you appreciate me if I did that for you?
I mean, I'd probably just be like, why are you doing this? This is not worth it. This is forcing me to like get out of the house because I clearly am not going anywhere else ever. So the 1 hour walk to and from work is like my only interaction with the outside world ever again at this point.
All right, well then I'm happy to help. You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right, so let's dive in, shall we? So we are going to, the way that our game is working is I'm going to shuffle the cards and lay them out. The card layout that I'm using is the transition or change layout.
Of course.
Because like, what else would I do? And to begin, we are going to discuss the Fool.
Oh, I can see him.
You can see him all right? Okay, good.
I can see him
all right. So the Fool card is a represent. Actually, Wes, do you want to do the definitions of the card?
Sure, it's like easy definitions, but the Fool is essentially the start of a new journey. So it's the beginning of a new adventure. A lot of people see that as like, oh, he's like an idiot, but the Fool sort of represents the level of innocence that you have at the beginning of any journey, at the beginning of any study, at the beginning of any adventure that you go on. It's just like you're completely you're going into the unknown, like the Frozen song.
Exactly. So the Fool has a few questions attached to it because we want to start someone's journey. So this is going to be a moment very much for those who the idea of the trans identity is new to. So, Wes, to begin, what does it mean to be transgender?
Oh gosh. So to be trans, I mean, in its entirety, it just means that you the gender that you identify with and feel most comfortable with doesn't coordinate with the gender that you've been told you were since birth. So any variant of that, if you're just like if your birth sex is not the thing that you have also said that is your gender, which I'm going to get into the concept of a birth sex, which is also like incorrect kind of. But it just means that you were told when you were born that like you're to this gender, and then later on in your life you're like, no, not really.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. What is cisgender?
This just means not trans. It's a Latin prefix. Cis and trans are just Latin words. It means trans means on the other side of, and cis means on the same side of. So it just means that you're continuing to stay where you are, what you were told, versus identifying with something else.
Awesome. And what are pronouns?
Pronouns are, I mean, they're in use in like many different languages. Some languages don't even really have what we would consider pronouns, but pronouns are just any form that we use to identify yourself or another person. Or even another things, like it is a pronoun. You can use you is a pronoun, I is a pronoun. These are all sort of things in the realm of identifying yourself and other people in the world in a way that's not just a nameless, references.
Okay, awesome. And just to cover the basics, I'm not even sure if this sentence is grammatically correct. So correct me. What are linguistics?
What is linguistics?
Awesome.
It's all right. Linguistics is not the study of grammar, so it doesn't matter. So linguistics is never, it doesn't, see, the thing is, this is actually a great example of linguistics. I know what you meant, right? So linguistics is the study of how we communicate both through sounds, through writing, even through things like sign language. It's just any type of study towards how we communicate with each other. And this has nothing to do with what is grammatically correct. It always has to do with what is like psychologically correct, I say. In linguistics, we talk about things called, there's prescriptivists and descriptivists. And a prescriptivist would be something like an English major. It was interesting in university because I had a creative writing class and also my linguistics. So in one class, I'm being told like, this is correct grammar, this is the correct way to speak. But in another, it's like, no, there's no real rules of what's correct. It's just, did you understand what they said? And is this common like language essentially?
Yeah, this is an ad-libbed question. I have been, I heard a few days ago, someone was discussing the aspect of proper grammar as a form of classism.
It can be. It can also even be a form of racism, in that a lot of different, like you'll have a lot of people are still calling it African American vernacular English, but it's not even a vernacular dialect. It's just African American English. Vernacular applies to a very specific type of language, and African American English actually is just, it's the dialect of English. It doesn't have technically, it isn't even technically a vernacular. But people will see that and they'll call it things like ghetto. It can be things like, ratchet language or like incorrect, and it absolutely can be a form of classism and racism, because it turns into this weird, well, I speak better than you, therefore I am more high class. It's super prominent in England, because you'll see in the United Kingdom, there's all these sort of variations of English that are all correct. They're all correct languages. But you'll have this weird hierarchy of class of people altering their accent based on like where they live and how rich they are.
Yeah, that's something I learned in My Fair Lady, where there's like there's just like a character's just like, I can call someone to a dialect for like within 3 blocks. Like he just like is just like a master of language.
That checked out. I only remember the preview for My Fair Lady that was on my VHS of The Sound of Music. I only know that they're in that trailer.
Yeah, I think at least the song that line is in the trailer. So maybe you are just as aware as I am.
I just remember the bad accent of like, all I want is it something somewhere. Is that from My Fair Lady?
I think so. Confession, I haven't actually seen My Fair Lady.
It's probably not. The accents I saw were quite bad, so.
Yeah, I've heard that about it, like it's because it's a very like accent and dialect heavy show. So I've heard like you have to be good to like do it pretty much, because
Yeah, especially
how you sound.
with Cockney accents, it just turns so quickly into like a mess if you don't know how to do that accent properly. It just, you sound like a bad production of like Oliver Twist. Oh no. Oh no.
Yeah. There's so many accents that people will kind of like grab onto and do a variation of, and it's like fake British accent is its own accent.
Yeah, it's like people, I think it's like, it's called BBC English in where that's like the British accent that people use in like American TV. When they just have to have a British accent, they'll use BBC English.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I've heard also, like, especially in the area where like in Southern Ontario, it's like a no accent area, because, or TV dialect.
Yeah.
Because there's no major area that's impacting how people sound, because the closest city is Toronto, which doesn't have a specific sound or accent.
Yeah.
So we just have to learn a lot of our dialect from television. And like I have my therapist is from Alabama, and we had our first call the other day. Oh my goodness, I loved her accent, and she was so like I hope you can understand me. And I'm just like, I watched so much American television. Of course, I can understand your accent.
That's great. That would cheer me up. I wouldn't have anything to talk about though. I'd be like, well, now I'm fine. Shit.
It was such a nice call, but that's not why we're here. Let's. I can talk about my therapy, but. Maybe therapy should be its own episode. I am always brainstorming. But let's begin. All right. For my shuffle, let's see. Do I got that right? I think that's right. All right. So I'm just going to shuffle the cards. I'm going to try and shuffle them in here so it at least looks visual. And Wes, I'm just going to get you to tell me when to stop.
Stop.
Okay. For the love of God. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. The High Priestess.
Ooh.
Death.
Yeah.
Your favorite.
My fave.
Justice. Wheel of Fortune. And the Hanged Man.
Ah. Interesting ones.
All righty. So the High Priestess is to represent secrets and mystery. So the question I have for you is, without the language you had at the time, how do you think you would have handled your trans identity when you came out?
Ooh. I don't know. Honestly, I don't think I didn't become trans until I got the language to figure out what I was. Because I'm someone who's I'm not super uncomfortable with the feminine. I'm not bothered by wearing dresses or shirts. I don't, just because it's like at this point it's just not my style. But I always was fashionably interested in all the options, and I think I only realized I was trans once I had the language to be like, yeah, that's what you are. I think I would just be confused and miserable if I didn't. I knew I was like not comfortable with ladiness and womanhood. When I was young, it was like, whatever, I'm just a kid, so I didn't really think about it. Mm-hmm. So it's like, it didn't until I became an adult, and especially getting, like, I'm a gay, I love men, but I never liked how men like me. So that was always a weird thing of being like, oh, I don't want to date guys. Am I a lesbian? No, I don't like girls. What's going on? So I just was like, guess I'm just asexual and aromantic, and I just don't like anybody and whatever. And then I came out as trans, and I was like, oh. Yeah. So I think language very much affects our identity. I think if we didn't have words to describe certain things, I don't think gender would even court. People just dress how they like. Because I might not even be miserable. I might just be comfortable with who I am, and I wouldn't have to worry about gender. That's another option.
Yeah, because you might not have the language to tell you you're wrong.
Yeah, exactly, right? So it's like, it's either there's no language to describe being different, but if there's no language to describe being the same either, it's just like, oh, whatever.
Yeah. I like that perspective. I've asked this question a few times on the show, and everyone has had a completely different answer, which I love. It's becoming one of my favorite questions now. And I really liked yours because it had a different twist. So I'm just having a general appreciation.
Yeah.
All right. So death. Boo, 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 boo.
I gotta love that skeleton.
Mm-hmm. Since it's your favorite card, do you want to do the definition of death?
Yeah, I mean, death. I have a tattoo of death. I can't really show it. Death is the card of transition. It's the card of moving from one place to another. This is another card where people kind of associate it with being something scary. People see death, and if they don't know much about tarot, they're like, oh no, that's bad. But death is the symbology on it is the end of a battle, and you see this skeleton on a horse riding away, and it's just sort of like there's this chapter that has now been closed, but it also means that something else is being opened. So I got this tattoo very shortly after I got my first shot of testosterone, because I was like, okay, I'm now starting a new journey, which was 1 year ago today, which I didn't realize until Facebook notified me about it.
Which is amazing. Do you consider, do you have a tranniversary?
I don't, and that's what bothers me. I came out as trans I know that I did not identify as a cisgender person in university. So by 2012, I knew I wasn't like a cis girl. I identified as gender queer. I don't think I ever came out about that because I just was like that with my friends, and I was still okay with she, her pronouns. And then I came out as trans masculine in 2016, and then I have all these other dates. I have the date I changed my name. I have the date that I came out as gender queer. I have the date I came out as gender like trans masculine, and then I never came out as trans male because it just kind of turned into that. Like I never was like, oh yes, I'm this. I think it's because, especially for a lot of trans men, and I don't want to speak for all trans men, but trying to fit into male spaces is a lot more I don't know the trans woman experience, but I think that a lot more trans men tend to identify as non-binary or trans masculine or like not a man, just because manhood is such this like statuesque thing to be, that I know so many trans dudes that don't even like being called men, and that's why we tend to rely on terms like trans dude and trans masculine, and because it's like, and not that anyone who has those identities still is invalid. It's just I find a lot more trans men have to go through this period of slowly getting to the hill of man. I'm still not even there yet. Even though I identify as a man, I still don't feel like I'm a man within men's spaces.
Yeah, and I've had that conversation with non-binary people as well, where when I've spoken with people who identify as non-binary who were assigned male, they have said things like they just feel like the idea of a man isn't them, but they know that they're not a woman. So and it's just like that's the non-binary deal.
Yeah, so it's like a lot. I think manhood is scary, but I think that as trans men, like us trans men, I think that it's our job kind of to redefine what manhood means to us, because I know so many people get caught up and they get worried like, oh, well, toxic masculinity and all this other shit, and it's like, well, I'm worried about this, and it's just like, just figure out what you like about being a man and just do that.
Yeah. And that's kind of the line that I've come to with my own gender identity, because for a while when I first came out as non-binary, I was very into the idea of like erasing gender and just like looking androgynous and confusing, which is fun, but not me. I'm a flamboyant, brightly colored person who enjoys makeup and doing my hair. And yes, those are things that are often attributed to femininity, but I don't attribute those to femininity. I attribute those to self-expression. So I don't know, suck it.
Yeah. your gender is you're a Pisces. But I mean, I actually had a period of that too, similarly, where like look at how I dress now, right? And I have long hair. You can't really see it because it's up because it's hot, but there's like you know, I had a period, I literally shaved my head down like bald, which I don't like. I think looks good on other people. It looked awful on me. I'm glad I did it though, because I think it's important for everyone to see what they look like with no hair. It's just a fun experience to be like, okay, this is what I look like just with my head.
Yeah.
But I shaved my head down. I only wore like really, really macho clothing. I didn't have like earrings. I wouldn't wear makeup. I wouldn't wear any jewelry. And I look back at that time and I'm like, I hate the way that I was expressing myself. It was miserable. And on top of that, I was still getting misgendered, so it wasn't doing anything for me. So I think that, you know, as trans people, we go through a period where we're trying to like, it's the like trying your best to not get misgendered period. And then once you realize like, okay, I can either be miserable and dressing in ways that are making me uncomfortable, or, you know, starving myself, or just like not doing things that I like to do to present a certain way, or I can just do what I want and dress how I want and not really worry too much about what other people are fucking saying about me.
Yeah, definitely. I've definitely come to that conclusion myself in my journey, and it's like just what I hope for other people, because it's not something that you can just straight up look at someone and just be like, hey, your obsession with passing is temporary and you will eventually be more comfortable and you're great. Like, you can say that, but they won't listen, kind of thing.
Well,
like,
also, like,
you say that, validate your friends.
Like, being misgendered sucks, and I think it's sometimes it's very much like straw on the camel's back thing. Like, it just eventually one day it's like, it just drives me nuts. But I think of my dad, who is a cis man, to this day still gets mistaken for a woman on the phone and in drive-throughs. And when he was younger, he had very long hair and was skinny and like quite androgynous, and would get comments like, is that a girl or a guy, right? So I'm like, if my cis dad can be dealing with that long into his adulthood, it's like, I can deal with that. And I think that I can separate, you know, accepting being like, not everything is gonna, it's not always gonna be perfect, but I think that for trans people, the most important thing is to stop worrying about what, you know, Sharon at Tim Hortons is saying about you, and instead surrounding yourself by people who validate like you and love you and want to celebrate you and your gender.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, changing the people around you is something that does happen a lot when people begin to transition. And I've been discussing lately, like the importance of still keeping like your original support network, like of cis people, because it stops you from like closing yourself into just a trans world.
Yeah.
And it lets you know that it's still okay. And it like sets up a safeguard and like a link to the world before. And I think that's such an interesting way to look at it, because it's like, I would definitely feel very different about myself if my cis friends had abandoned me.
Yeah, like I'm definitely lucky that like I was like, you know, I was already pretty surrounded by a lot of like LGBT people when I came out, so it was like relatively easy for me. I don't think I had many well, I had a lot of cis friends, but all of them were like something.
Yeah, I was like a magnet for trans people when I first moved to Oakville. Like the first like 11 people I met were all trans, and
Wow.
like I'm not kidding. And
I know people before they come out, and then I'm a magnet for like pre-transition trans people.
I've been going through that lately as well, and I think it's like just when you make yourself a known support system, people are going, or like at least someone who will understand. Of course, they're gonna seek you out.
Yeah,
because like as rough an exterior as you have, I can tell. I know your secret, Wes. You're not a dick.
I'm
You're
not.
a supportive friend. You're a dick, but like you're not a dick.
I'm not a dick to people who don't deserve
it. Yeah.
Give me 1 second. I'm gonna switch to internet.
Okay.
It's probably just gonna switch to my. Okay. Now I'm switched to my regular internet. I have to keep going in and out of this and data.
Oh no.
Because I don't trust my internet to handle this. Am I frozen?
You were frozen for a second when I said, "Oh no," and then as soon as I finished it was fine. So you came back. Yeah, it was a blip that my reaction was bigger than.
Okay.
So anyway, death. Now that we're done defining it, the question attached to death for you is: what is a recent positive change to language in regards to inclusivity?
Oh, I mean, easy answer is I think that proper singular they was added to the dictionary, which I know some people were mad about, but it's just like, that's just how the dictionary works. If people are using a word, it gets put in the dictionary. Like,
yeah, that's how it is.
I think that like more people are using that, and I think that it's a good change to be going towards, because I know a lot of people get like caught up on singular they, but it's just like, it's just a word, just calm down, it's fine. So having that in the dictionary was definitely like a good step towards making people like shut up about like, well, that's not proper, because everyone loves to do the whole that's not proper grammar argument towards it, which it is proper grammar. It's just it's complicated history behind that word.
Mm-hmm. And
I'm still seeing that I'm frozen on my screen. Am I frozen on your screen?
No, you're not. You're moving and you're looking great.
Okay, perfect. As long as I'm not frozen on the other end.
Yeah, you're good. All right. So justice.
Justice.
Do you want to just do all the definitions? Because
I mean, justice is justice. That's an easy card. It's just fairness. Final words on something. Usually, it's like what's a like, get what you deserve kind of card. It's a karma card a little bit sometimes, but it's very much about like fair trial.
Yeah, this is one of my this is one of my stretch questions. But what is the current LGBT acronym, and why does it keep changing?
Okay, let's see if I can recall all of them. LGBTQIA2, QIA2. Is there another A? I think there's 2 A's. P. I know to that end. And sorry, what was the secondary question?
Why does it keep changing? Why don't you know it? Why isn't it just the acronym I opened with?
I mean, I don't think everyone always, most people just say LGBT+. I don't really have a problem with there being more like in the extended thing. It's just to really make people feel more included. I think that there is a fair criticism that grouping everyone in together when all of us have very different, like my experiences as a trans dude are so much different than like, you know, a cis gay guy, right? It's like we're not going to have much in common there besides the fact that we're both men. Like even my experience, like I am a gay guy, but I don't have that experience of being attracted to men and having that being seen as wrong. I spent my entire life being attracted to men and that being very normal. And then it wasn't until I was an adult and you know, figured out what my gender was that my sexuality just kind of slid in there quietly. So I think that in terms of certain spaces, I think that it's nice to have those spaces in general, like the generalized big large acronym in like colleges and places where people can meet people who are also marginalized. I think that's fair. I think that it keeps changing because there's different types of identity that we, you know, discovered and people are still figuring out. And I think it's important to include everyone, but I also think it's fair to just say, like, when it comes to more particular issues, like for example, when I'm talking about trans stuff, I'm not talking about like, I sometimes I'll see lists that's like this LGBT celebrity, and I'm like, is he all of those things? So it's like I think that it's important to be like, I'm talking about trans stuff, I'm talking about things to do with lesbians, I'm talking about things to do with people who are bi, etc. when it comes down to more specific issues, because sometimes I find when they just say like LGBT celebrities, it's just like, well, you didn't include any T, so, or any B, so you're just saying L and G. Like it happens a lot where people do that.
Yeah.
And you certainly didn't include any A or 2.
Oh yeah. Right. So our next card is the Wheel of Fortune, which is a happy card, which means that with, you know, success and luck comes Wes. Will you share with us your coming out story?
Oh my God. As I said earlier, my coming out story is very messy. I slowly, but year by year, turned into a trans man. And it was like, oh God, I was gender queer, which I never really came out. I was just like, hey, I'm gender queer. And I put it on my Tumblr blog and was like, this is me. And that was kind of the extent of it. And then I was gender fluid for a bit. And then I was transmasculine. I think I was non-binary before that. Then I was transmasculine. And I was trans man. I think I definitely hard was I am transmasculine in 2015, and it's such a cringy, embarrassing story. But I was going to my first LARP event, and I had to put down my email, and the first thing I did was I don't want to be called this name anymore, because I don't want to meet new people and have them know that name. So I just very speedily was okay, I'm gonna go by a new name now, and I'm transmasculine, and please don't use she/her pronouns for me anymore. And that was the extent of it. And it was really just because I didn't want to. I had been faced with a new opportunity to meet a bunch of new people, and I was like, oh, I could meet all these people and have them never know what my old name was. I'm gonna change it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So I think that was it. I came out to my parents, and I remember I sent this long message to my dad over Facebook, and he was like, yeah, I don't, whatever. He didn't care. He didn't care at all. My mom was a little bit more, this is weird. She was upset because my middle name is Margaret, and it was part of my name before, and that was her mom's mom. Her mom's name. It was her mom's name, and her mom died before I was born, so it was everyone in the family has a name of someone as their middle name. And I think she was a little upset because she was worried that when I changed my name, I was gonna get rid of that. And I was like, no, it'll just be my middle name. I'm not and no one sees my middle name anyway, so who cares, right?
Mm-hmm.
But she was okay with it too. I think she had some questions about it, but they've both been very accepting and chill. And I'm lucky. My grandma was like, oh wow, I'm gonna go buy you breakfast or something. She wanted to take me to some food place in Sudbury. So my grandma's been really excited. I'm very lucky to have such a woke family, because I don't think I have anyone in my family that has been weird about my transition at all. Everyone has just been okay, that's fine.
Awesome. Yeah, I love your coming out story, which is why I knew we had to. I'm a good one. There's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, I was I'm trying to think. I don't think I have any bad I think that's why I don't really feel I have a coming out stories, because it was such a minor event for me.
Yeah, everyone was just all right.
Yeah, everyone's okay, that's fine, whatever. That's the extent of it, really.
Yeah.
But it is nice, it's it can happen to everyone who's oh, any boomer out there who doesn't who gets weird about their kid being trans. It's my parents are old and they're fine. So it's what's your excuse?
Yeah, I've met enough people in larger age ranges than my parents that are absolutely fine with all the gay shit in my life.
Yeah.
That it's just I'm sorry, if you can learn to use the internet at your age, you learn to use my pronoun.
Yeah, it's there's so many harder things to learn out there than just figuring out how to use pronouns for somebody.
It's the idea of, oh, well, I have to think before I speak and I don't like it.
Yeah, pretty much. They've never had to pause.
Yeah, and it's well, you probably should have been doing that anyway. Who's to say? So our fifth question for the Hanged Man. You identify as a witch.
I do.
But in Harry Potter, all the witches are girls and all the wizards are boys. What's up with that?
Well, there's a linguistic reason for that. So warlock, that word comes from traitor. It doesn't mean witch or magical person anyways. And wizard came from the wise ard, which means wise man. So it also has nothing to do, like you would have court wizards because it was just the wise old person in court. So wizard doesn't have anything to do with that. I know some Italian people go by magi because that's like the magic call. But witch was used in both for men and women for a very long time. The first time you hear that word, since the first time they started using it, it's been used for both men and women. And you know, of the many things that J.K. Rowling was wrong about, that is one of the other things.
Yeah, it's on the list.
It's on the list of like shit you didn't get.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, so that is our first deal down.
Yeah. I'm gonna check the chat. How do I check the chat? I don't know.
It doesn't look like we have any comments yet. If any of our viewers have any questions, comments, concerns, or just want to say hi, we're watching. All right.
Are we shuffling again?
Shuffling again. Just say when.
Now.
Okay. The Tower.
Ooh.
Judgment. The Moon. The Moon is like one of my favorites because I'm biased and I was born on the 18th and it's the 18th card.
Ah, that checks out.
Yeah. And it's just a pretty card. Oh, the Star. That is another one of my favorites. And the Empress. Ooh. Yeah, the Star and the Moon are like my favorites because I'm like that. Because of who I am as a person. And in my deck, the card that's for the Star, it has a cat that looks like my cat. Therefore,
oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so for those watching at home who don't know every detail about my life for some reason, for Christmas, Wes got me a purple cat tarot deck, which is just like he won.
On brand.
Yeah, like they're like I showed them to other people and they're just like they're yours, of course.
Well, it's weird. I love themed like different art tarot decks, but I am so basic and I only ever use my regular Rider-Waite one. I have a crow one that I got when I was in Salem. Never used it because the cards are too big and I have little small hands. Yeah,
my very first tarot deck was it was a kid's deck, so they were like this big. I'm not here. There.
Mm-hmm.
So they were tiny
ones.
They were so cute, and I got so good at shuffling them that when I moved to like actual tarot cards, it was so awkward because I was just like, oh, my mindset, I'm just not in the mode for this. Alrighty, moving forward. So I totally did them in the wrong order last time, but I have the right order this time because I did that crazy thing where you think about things before you do them. And then I remembered what I was supposed to do. It was great. So number 1 is the Tower card.
Okay.
So misery, distress, and deception.
Yeah, Tower's the card of like, fuck you, shit's getting bad, idiot.
Yeah. So with that, I have a question.
Ooh.
What is the issue with asking trans people about their genitals?
Oh, I mean, why would you ask that of anyone, really? Like, I get that people are curious. Like, I think that it's important to be curious in general. I think that wanting to ask questions is good. But I always say, if it's a question that you would be uncomfortable with someone asking you, don't be asking people unless they're like your close friend. You know, I say I'm a trans man, and I'm hoping people just assume that they understand what that means, and they could Google it if they don't, right? And I think that especially with like non-binary people being like, well, what were you born as? It's just like, are you trying to fuck them? Like, what's going on? Like, what's the reason for knowing? Like, I just think I understand curiosity and I get it, but it's just like, in the end, unless you're their doctor or you're going to have sex, I don't think that knowing what someone's genitals are, it's like asking someone how big their dick is. It's just weird. It's like, hey, why are you asking that of a person that you barely know?
And it's always like when I have a trans friend, and I'm going to tell a specific story.
Yeah.
So flashback to back in the day when everyone thought I was a woman, and I was dating a non-binary person, and I was fascinated by their identity. Amazing. Anyway, I had my cousin's boyfriend was asking questions about them, and like at first it was like a slow burn of just slowly getting more disrespectful with each question, and then finally I got the question that he wanted to ask the whole time of, yeah, but like, what do they have down there? And I looked at him and I was just like, oh, did you want to plan something? Like, did you want to interact with their genitals? He froze, just like, no.
Yeah, that's a good way to catch them.
No. And I was like, oh, well, you have no other reason to have known. So I misunderstood.
Yeah, that's actually, give me 1 second. My battery's dying, so I'm going to change locations.
That's fair. I will. I'm
moving to the place with better lighting though, so.
Ooh, you're getting an upgrade.
Now I feel better about myself when I'm in here.
The mood lighting. Oh wow, you do actually look better.
Really? I'm meant to be in like a cave with blue lighting. So I get to sit next to my kitty.
Jasper.
Jasper's here.
Have you told Jasper that I missed him?
Well, I don't think he certainly doesn't miss me. He misses no one. Okay.
Fine. I know Zeppelin misses me, and that's enough.
Oh my god, that cat is so loud.
Yeah, he's great. All right. Number 2, the judgment card. Oh, so
that's another card that I'm gonna get a tattoo of, is judgment.
Ooh. I thought that. I was thinking that when I was going through the card yesterday, and I wasn't sure, and then I decided it wasn't information that was really, really important, so I didn't ask, and I still got the answer anyway because life is magic.
Well, yeah, because I wanted to get the 2 things, which is the only things that are certain in life is death and judgment.
I like that. Ah. Oh yeah, and that's when you're doing like opposite on your arm.
Yeah, other arm.
Yeah, I thought so. All right. So for the question for judgment, which is like a change of position, renewal, we are going to ask, we already touched on this a little bit. Could you share with us the history of singular they as a pronoun, when it was used, why it stopped, and why it's resurging?
Okay. I mean, so there's formal use of it and informal. And informally, it's been in use since the English language has been existent. There's like stuff from the 1300s where they were using a singular they, which was said a different way. I think it was they, and it was like the, or like, no, it's not the, but they had a version of they, which was spelled with one of those weird like sideways thes.
Okay.
Old English. So Old English had a form of they that was used singularly, and you can find evidence of it, but it's always in non-informal papers. Formally, in proper English, it hasn't been used much because people used to just use he. Like, it was just like, if they didn't know, they would just use he. You know, if the student wants to come into the room, then he can do, like, you'll find that in a lot of old stuff, that stuffy old English people always love to just revert to he. But it's always been there. And I think that what happened about why it kind of went away is it's still in use, and it was still in use for a while. But so in English, we kind of have this. In other languages, you'll have essentially impersonal and personal pronouns. So impersonal is like you're not talking about the person like they're in the room, and then personal, which is like they're in the room, right? So we use singular they in an impersonal manner. So, oh, you know, this person came into the store and they were asking for something, right? That's correct grammar, and people don't blink at that. But people grammatically, with the way that a lot of English people see it, is if you were talking about your friend, like, oh, you know, Jerry's having a birthday. Jerry said that they want to do this, and a lot of people would be uncomfortable with when it's a personal thing, which is involving like a named person who's there. So it kind of came back after essentially neopronouns weren't really catching on, because those were a big thing in the 80s and 90s of when people were trying to get more into gender neutral stuff. So many different things were coming out about different types of gender neutral pronouns, and everyone was trying to create a new one instead of being like, hey, do we already have a word?
All right, and we will get more into neo pronouns as the cards reveal themselves, which is awesome. So, yeah, do you feel satisfied with that answer?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
It's a word that's always been there. I don't think it ever went away. It's just like been used in different variation, really.
Yeah. Okay, so the moon. Number 18.
Yeah.
Hidden enemies, danger, error.
I love the moon. Disorder.
How do you feel a disconnection from common masculine tropes has impacted your identity?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yes. How do you feel a disconnection from common masculine tropes has impacted your identity?
Well, I think I'm going back to like my family life and my dad. I think I'm lucky in that I did not grow up around very macho men. So my understanding of masculinity and my ideal of masculinity was, you know, someone like everyone's base understanding of the masculine and feminine usually starts with your parent, right? So you understand women to be a certain way because of your mother, and you understand men to be a certain way because of your father. And my dad is like soft-spoken, a musician, never yells, like smart, likes to read, you know, likes to write, doesn't like get into like sports and like big dude stuff. Like it's just like I always like, he looked like Aragorn from Lord of the Rings for a lot of my life. And speaking of Lord of the Rings, like that was another thing. He read those books to me, and my idea of like masculinity is like the men in these books who are okay with, you know, kissing their friends and holding their friends and telling their friends that they love them, and that type of masculinity was something that I grew up with. And I think, but on top of that, I did grow up in a very small town where every other person's dad was like, worked at the mine, drank a lot, had some sort of ATV, truck, snowmobile, etc. type of vehicle that he liked to drive around, and tended to be quite insecure with their masculinity. So I think that growing up there created a level of like me being like, I don't want to be like those people. But later on in adulthood, I think that I did feel a little bit of a pressure to look more masculine, like what I was talking about before, about like shaving my head and like, you know, just like trying to be super masculine. I think that those tropes kind of, I think everyone who's trans has to try on different types of the way that they want to perceive themselves, because we don't get just put in the right clothes at birth. We're just like, oh shit, we have to figure out how to like express ourselves. So yeah, I mean, I think that I'm lucky in that the things that I consider masculine are not the things that everyone else idealizes as super masculine. But I did have my period of trying to butch it up, which didn't go very well.
Yeah.
But I think it's important for you know, especially trans dudes, because I know that a lot of trans dudes have a difficulty trying to find male figures that they can identify with, and I think it's important to find different types of masculinity in different types of media that's not the typical like strong you know, Dwayne the Rock Johnson kind of guy, although he's quite nice. So I support men like him too.
Yeah. Big, strong, and kind. Sign me.
Yeah, be nice.
Yeah, as we touched on last week, the general life philosophy that I practice is don't be a dick.
Yeah, I mean, I think that don't be a dick is a pretty easy way to live life. If you just I even started with like mind your own business. If you just mind your own business, you will probably get through life without too much confrontation, and without too many people hating you.
Yeah, see, I have to get involved and help people. I'll get in trouble. I
don't make eye contact with anyone.
Sorry?
I said I don't make eye contact with anyone. I just go to my destinations without interacting with the world. I pretend I'm the only person.
Yeah, I've tried to do that, and I physically cannot.
Well, I'm like I think the weird thing about being like a goth is like we dress in a way that inherently draws attention, but most of us do not like attention.
Yeah. Whereas I adore attention and dress however I want because I love said attention.
I think it's like some form of like goth, like the monks that whip themselves. It's like, I'm going to dress in a way that's going to make people say weird shit to me because I would like to feel pain.
Yeah, I want old people to hate me. And yeah. All right. So, the star, because I clearly shuffled these very well.
I mean, we're only using the 22 major arcana, so.
Yeah. Yeah. All righty. So, the star. Do you want to do this definition?
Yeah, I mean, the star is a level of hopefulness to it. The star is one of those. I never get the star because I'm probably not a very optimistic person. But it also it's caring, it's nurturing. The star has a lot to do with being a beacon of hope, a beacon of light and pleasantness. This is why I never get the card. I'm not that person.
Oh, that's funny. I get the star all the time.
Yeah, I mean the star is a very nice card to have if you are a nurturing type of person.
Yeah. I just pictured you doing like a fear reading and getting the star and just like screaming.
Well, like to me, like that would be like, oh God, who do I have to take care of? Oh no.
All right. So my question for the star is, why do people struggle to update their language?
Oh, I mean, language is hard. In general, language is hard. It's hard to learn new languages. It's most of the stuff. I think there's a study done. I need to fact check this, but it's like essentially most of the words that we use, we don't use that many words. Like I think it's like only like a small percentage of the human language that we actually use on a daily basis. And most of the time we're just saying the same words over and over and over again because there's a set number that we can get our thoughts out with, right? So a lot of people will spend their whole lives only using this set amount of words, and then when they have to willingly change it, you know, it's the same people who get frustrated when they don't know how to say someone's name, right? And I think that I get it. Words are hard, and you know, I shouldn't. In the same way, you shouldn't judge someone who is a second, like English is a second language, and they may not know how to pronounce someone's name properly, or they might not know how to pronounce a store properly. It would be quite shitty to me making fun of someone for not knowing how to speak English correctly, which, by the way, they know 2 languages and you know 1 most of the time. So it's just like, but I think that a willingness and wanting to being able to update your language is important. I think, like, what is this in terms of, is this like specifically about people who can't fucking say they pronouns?
Yeah, it's about my mom.
I mean that overall, I think that people get in their heads when they're told to say something a certain way, right? And if it just came naturally and they didn't think about it too much and they weren't worried about it and they weren't stressing about it, it would just come naturally. I think once people decide in their head, this is hard for me, you have already set up the self-fulfilling prophecy of, I am going to fuck this up. Yeah. And I remember when I first, this is a good story, but when I first came out, I had a friend at the time message me and say like, oh, like, just so you know, like, I'm gonna screw up and blah blah, and like, you can, like, I have a lot of cis friends who would do this, who'd be like, if I ever screw up, you can just hit me. And I'm like, you are setting yourself up to be screwing up. Don't talk about it. Don't assume that you're gonna screw up, because you're thinking about it too hard. It's like how to pronounce someone's name. If you think about it too hard, words start to screw around in your head, and then you just start to overthink it. I think people are just overthinking things, really. It's just, it's hard, but it's not like, if you decide already that you're going to screw up, then of course you're going to be screwing up.
Yeah, I absolutely think it's definitely a case of just mind over matter. And if you think something's hard, it will be hard. If you believe in yourself, well, you're going to be a lot more successful.
Yeah, I mean, it's also like, I think that wanting to just, I think a lot of people don't really want to have to change their language, and I think that faults them too. They're like, well, I don't want to have to change. So that every time they do it, they get all mad about it, and it's just like, just move on. Correct yourself and move on.
Yeah, that is the best thing that you can that you can do when you misgender someone, is just like, and also like, try re-saying the sentence just to get the habit in, instead of being like, oh, they went, or like, oh, they went to the store. Like, just, like, stop yourself. Like, they went to the store. It may sound like it's like, I've had people say like, oh, I feel like a child when I have to correct myself, and it's just like, well, like, you are equating it to children, because children are learning. You're learning.
Yeah, I mean, it's learning. I mean, it's a thing. It's weird. It's a thing we did in one of the LARPs I went to, where it's exactly what you said. You have to repeat what you said. So someone would like be like, "Oh, pronouns," and they'd be like, "Oh, I'm sorry," and then re-say the sentence.
Yeah, it's the best way to build up a habit. Yeah,
and also don't get upset about being interrupted, because it's like, when you're in a conversation, it's important. I was talking to my mom, and my mom was like, "Oh, why do you keep correcting me?" And I was like, just like interrupting me, and was like, oh, it feels kind of malicious. And I was like, no, I'm just, because by the time you finish the conversation, I don't want to be like, oh, and by the way, here, and here, use the wrong pronouns for my friend. Like, it's just like, it's easier to just interrupt and move on, right?
Yeah, and so many, like, being corrected is not a personal attack.
Yeah, it's not. It's just like, I would say, like, imagine it's someone's name. And imagine how frustrating it would be to constantly have people mispronouncing your name. And would you get mad at that person for correcting you on how to pronounce their name? And if you would get mad at that person, you're probably a bit of an asshole.
Yeah.
So treat pronouns like names. Just if you say the wrong one, move on. And also, you know, try to talk about that person in passing by yourself. Because I think a lot of people, because they don't have to talk about that person and use pronouns, or sometimes don't talk about that person at all. Like, I don't talk about people too often unless I'm recalling a story. But if you just sit in your room and practice talking about a person, anybody, make up a fake person and use all types of pronouns, you'll get used to it.
And I think people are just afraid of taking the time to practice, or even not even just afraid, but just literally don't have it.
We need Duolingo for English pronouns.
Yeah.
You have to do your daily, like, whatever test to figure it out.
Exactly. All right. Moving forward, we have the Empress card.
Ooh, the Empress.
So, initiative, action, doubt. So So, what is the impact that feminism has had on language in the last, century? Since
like the English language or just all language?
Whatever you have the answer for. Whatever
I mean, so in English, I mean, you obviously see things like we're not a Romance language, so we're not like Latin based, but we have a lot of Latin influences because there was a period of time where the French were in charge of Saxons at the time. I believe that was what they were called, but it was essentially the French took over the English, and we got a lot of words from them because of that. That's why we have words like parliament, like parlement. We have words like even this is a fun one, but in England they called the toilet the loo. And the reason for that is because back in the day, when you didn't have a toilet, you just throw your waste out the window. And in French, you would say, look out for the water. So regardez-le. I fucking suck at French, but it's like regardez-le. But English people would say gardez-le. And it just turned into the loo, right?
Yeah.
Because of the fact that we have a lot of French influence on our language, we do have a lot of gendered things. And it's not even just like French's problem. There's problems in Germanic English too. But we'll have stuff like waiter, waitress, steward, stewardess, actor, actress, right? And I think that lately there's been a lot more push to just have it being the one thing. I'm an actor. I am a wait staff. Steward. We've been starting negating all these. Some people like having those words, but there's been a lot of push to remove this weird like gendered words about certain people because it can cause a lot of assumptions and it can cause your work life to be different even if you're not even face to face with a customer, right? So I think that push has been definitely quite I think a good thing. I know people are talking about it's in the Oscars, right? People are pushing for it just to be a best actor category and to stop separating it because it's weird to separate the genders just for actor and actress, but not for director, not for, screenwriter. And it's just like, you've not made it equal. You've only made it separated in one category, right?
Yeah.
In other languages, there's been different types of, feminist pushes to, I know that in Japan, there's been a lot of different movements between a lot of girls. And again, I'm not like super versed on this, but I know that there's been a lot of change between like how people are acting, because I know there's a lot of effeminate ways of talking and like feminine ways of speaking to women that a lot of like tomboys are like being like, no, I'm not doing that anymore, right? And being more informal with their language. And it's all over the place. You'll have different languages that women don't want to be held back by. And specifically in English, I think that it has to do with our job position and how gendered we've kind of put our language into.
Yeah.
I think that's all. What's interesting about gender and language is I took a class called Language and Gender, and it was less about gender presentation, but it was just more about like the way that people talk. And there's this interesting thing about how like women tend to be interrupted more, and men tend to interrupt more, and women tend to use language. For example, like women tend to use language such as "I would like" rather than "I want." So you're at a store and it's like, "Oh, I would like a coffee, please." I want a coffee, please. And there's these different little things that we, that just get ingrained into people's language. So that I think that a lot of people are trying to separate gender from language because it's just like it can create these weird dynamics between people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is. I've heard, basically this started because I read something about how women tend to soften their language and their thoughts with things like, oh, I just wanted to say, instead of I wanted to say, or even just saying what you wanted to say. And so I've been trying to get into the habit of and I've been actively being more conscious of trying to be direct with my language, because I didn't realize that was a feminine thing and I think it's also part of anxiety because I am also an anxious mess. So we can't forget that.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, our language kind of equates passiveness and with femininity and being polite with femininity. It's interesting that you said that. It was another thing about how women tend to use like affirmative sounds more. So when you're talking to someone, you go, oh, and men tend to just be quiet and just listen. Because women are kind of taught to make sure that you're engaging with them.
Yeah, active listening.
And it's interesting what you're saying about like not being like using language as if you're not sure. That's actually like kind of a thing in the way that a lot of Japanese people talk. That there's this way of talking that's like you don't say like I know this and this is true and blah blah, because it makes you sound like within culturally a lot of people would see that as being like a bit of a dick and a know-it-all. So there's all these language cues that's like, well, I believe it to be, I think that it might be, like, there's a lot of might and maybes used, or like essentially the Japanese equivalency of that. And it's like, I'm only saying this because I'm learning Japanese on Duolingo. So, like, I have all these facts now that may not be 100% true, but I know that I was reading a thing about how there's like a lot of language cues about saying things like, oh, I think, or maybe it's this, or just not being definite on anything because it's seen as impolite.
Yeah, and that is definitely the mindset that created that verbal habit for me. It's the kind of thing where like I can literally, because I'm trying to be more conscious of it, I can literally feel the change, and it's neat.
Yeah.
Moving on. Alrighty. We are halfway through.
Yay.
All right. Say when.
When.
You're so quick.
I don't know how much lag there is, so I'm just like, I'll say it.
I was literally just starting. I'm like, say when. Shuffle, shuffle. Okay. The Chariot. The Emperor. The Hermit. Strength. The World.
That world, though.
Alrighty, so the Chariot. All right, so the Chariot is to represent providence, war, and triumph. So with this, I am going to ask you, what are your thoughts on the word queer?
Oh, I have a mixed relationship with that word. I think it's important. I understand its function. And I don't tend to get too mad about people being like the queer community or whatever. I personally don't identify as queer. I just don't identify with that word, and I guess it's like I associate it too much with negative things. To be like, people are free to reclaim the slurs that they would like to reclaim. I think that's good, and I think that that's healthy for people. But I've not enjoyed being lumped in and called queer just because I'm like, I'm not, but okay. So I think it's just hard. It's hard when slurs are reclaimed because not everyone has the same relationship with that slur, right?
Yeah.
So to a lot of people, it's never been used for a slur. And I think my only frustration has been, it's been a lot of, like, I'll have, like, cishet people using it just kind of casually, and it's taken a lot of my energy to not, like, be like, like, kind of twitch at it when I hear, like, essentially not queer people saying queer. So I think that there's when you reclaim something, there's also a level of, like, okay, are we just going to be okay with everyone saying this now? That's the question, right? And for me, it's still a little bit of a, I identified as genderqueer for a while, but even I think I left that identity because I was just uncomfortable with, I just did not feel like I was queer. I didn't feel comfortable using that word because it just, to me, it was just like a nasty word that I've been called, right?
Yeah. And as you know, for me, like, I'm the opposite, where I love the word queer.
And I understand its function because it is a little bit frustrating to say like LGBTQIA2+ or whatever, right? So I understand its function is to just like quickly lump people, but at the same time, you know, implying that everyone in that acronym would identify as queer is when queer is in the acronym, right? It's the Q is for queer. So it's just like, you know, I have a difficult relationship with it. I understand the function of the word. I think it's good that people use it, and I support everyone who uses it. I just personally don't like to label myself as that just because I just don't like the word. And I think it's just people need to be careful about who they're talking to, I think. Yeah. You know, it just being like when you're saying like, oh yeah, queer people and all blah, and I kind of get lumped in, and I'm just like, I never say anything because again, I don't care enough to be saying shit about it, but I usually am just like, well, I personally don't identify as that, but
yeah. Awesome. Oh, I have a barking dog under the table.
Doggy.
Yeah, her name is CJ. She is amazing.
CJ.
There she is. Yeah, she has the same name as my nephew, which is amazing.
Oh, right. I forgot about young CJ.
Yeah, little CJ, little Corey Jr. and CJ the dog. Both CJs that came into my life around the same time. So, like, I think I love them the same. I really hope my brother's not watching. Well, actually, I do hope he's watching because I like attention, but still. Moving on to the Emperor.
The Emperor.
Do you want to do this definition?
Sure. I mean, the Emperor is Mr. Authority. It was weird that you did the chariot earlier, right? And it was like some war thing. I've never read it that way. But anyway, the Emperor is like, I always forget what like the actual packet says about cards because there's different meanings for different decks. But anyways, the Emperor is a figure of masculine authority. Essentially, he is the yin to the Empress's yang. He represents a level of intensity and a level of strength. And I'm trying to think of the. He's very his words are intentional and he's a little strict, whereas the Empress would be a little bit more soft and gentle. So the Emperor can not always be a very good card, but it does resemble having some level of emotional strength to yourself.
Mm-hmm. So with that being said, will you, this is something that we did kind of talk about already, but I was just wondering about the support network that you had through the years of your transition and like different people that you had helping you and everything.
Well, I think I was friends with I think at the time I had a lot of trans friends. So but I didn't have many trans male friends until later in my life, which was, I think that was a bit of a struggle. I had some online acquaintances. So I think that for me, it was a little bit tough because I didn't have many trans men in my life. I had a lot of non-binary people in my life, and I had a few trans women in my life, but there's very few trans men that I knew personally that I could hang out with until a little bit later. So I think I struggled with, having those, mentors, having someone to look up to whose transition, I could coordinate with. I think that's why I started testosterone so late in my transition, because I only started last year and I came out as in 2016. So I think that is because I didn't know much about it. I didn't know how to get it. I didn't know how much it was going to cost. I didn't know what it was going to do to my body. And I didn't have many friends who were taking testosterone, if any, right, at the time. So it was just a little bit, though I had trans friends, I didn't have many trans male friends until a little bit later. So that was a bit of a pain. But everyone around me was quite supportive and nice. So that was good. Yeah,
that's amazing. All right. Yeah, I expected good things from your support network.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't need much support. I was like, again, I was thankfully in a place where I was dealing with, I've dealt with depression in my life, but it never came from a trans place. It came with a lot of financial struggle. So I think that was like a huge, horrible stress in my life. So because of that, my transness kind of got put in the back burner because I was just constantly worried about money.
Yeah. Too busy to be stressed about this.
Yeah, I was like, oh God, I can't afford to live in the city because I have other things to be worrying about.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something similar I've heard with a few people who've just like they would reach different like check marks in their life to make sure that they were stable before transitioning.
Yeah, like I didn't want to start hormones until I could guarantee myself that I would be able to stick to it, because it is a lifelong, commitment essentially. So I wasn't even thinking about it until later, and I think I didn't start thinking about hormones until I was like, I noticed myself aging, and I was like, oh no, I don't want to age like a woman. I need to start hormones. Like I was like, if I get old, I need to be a daddy. I don't want to be an old woman.
Oh, Daddy Wes.
That was my only reason. I was like, if I have to be old, I want to be a wizard. I need to look like Gandalf.
Hell yeah. Or you look like our next card, the Hermit.
Yeah, oh my God, me now, honestly.
Alrighty, do you want to define the Hermit?
Yeah, I mean, the Hermit is very self-explanatory. It's an isolation card. It's not a bad card. It has to do with a lot of self reflection and being on your own. Because I think that's important to learn how to be on your own. A lot of people don't know how to do that. I certainly didn't, and I spent a lot of my life kind of relying on other people until I could figure out, oh, you're what is this? It's like a saying. It's like you're born alone, you die alone. It's like, and your best friend should always be yourself. So the Hermit is a card of self-reflection and moving away to be with yourself rather than surrounding yourself with other people.
Mm-hmm. So the question associated with the Hermit is one that we did just talk about, because that's just how the cards are, I guess.
Easy, transitioning well.
Yeah, actually, like I couldn't have planned this thing. Well, I should have planned. I could have planned this. I could have, but I didn't, and it's still working out. Anyway, when you came out, did you lose straight friends?
Did I lose straight friends? Did I have straight friends?
I was wondering.
I definitely. Oh God, I completely forgot about this. I had a friend that I don't know if it was because I came out or whatever. Because I hadn't changed my name at the time, but I did lose one friend who is quite close to me. Kind of when I started getting a little bit more radically queer. Because I was more involved in politics. I was more involved in like gender and sexuality and like social justice and stuff like that. I was very loud about those things. Mm-hmm. And I was friends with someone who very much didn't really care about that and was just like, oh, I don't really care about that stuff. Like, and it's like, well, you don't care because you don't have to. It's not affecting you.
Yeah.
So I had a quiet falling out. I don't think I had any big friend breakups. But it definitely was like slowly, it was like, oh, we have absolutely nothing in common now. Yeah, like, I'm this side shaved SJW on Tumblr, and you just want to like chill and not do anything.
Yeah.
But besides that, I mean, I've never been someone who had a lot of friends in general, because I tend to focus my energy on like large amounts of energy on a small group of people. Mm-hmm. So within my lifetime, my friend groups have always been quite small, and thankfully they've always been quite accepting. And I came out as trans when I was in a place where a lot of my friends were trans already.
Yeah. Yeah, when I came out, most of my friends were trans, and I still lost friends.
Wow.
Like I lost some straight friends. Like I had a full group of friends just stopped talking to me.
Oh wow.
Like there were like 5 people who just like abruptly just wouldn't like I never spoke to them about it. So I just kind of accepted it. but it's something I only like it's weird. I remembered it recently of just like, wow, those like that group of 5 people I was friends with in the makeup program stopped talking to me as like literally like the semester that I came out.
Wow,
and stopped sitting with me in class, like actually like actively, like one time one of them moved.
Yeah, I mean, that's messed up. I think I probably lost more friends, but I think it's like when it's slow falling out, you don't notice it because like it's just like a mutual like, oh, I realize I haven't talked to that person forever, whatever, right? So it's like in terms of like my transness, who knows? I may have lost people because of that, but I certainly didn't notice, and it was probably just them unfriending me on Facebook, and then I never thought about it again.
Yeah, I think that might be like the more like I probably have more than like that group that I lost, but
And if someone actively not wanting to sit next to you is like, that's like, there's like obvious, and then there's like, oh, I realize I haven't talked to that person in a while.
Yeah, which is like I think I definitely repressed that because as I said, it's something like I just remembered. Like I was just like, oh wow, that's a thing that happened and that sucked.
Yeah. I mean, I've dealt with like, you know, I still to this day deal with people being weird about it. You know, I am part of many LARP communities, and I've had like, I've met people and they've been cool with me, and then I'll talk about something on Facebook and they'll be like a complete act of themselves, and I'm like, okay, Jesus. And then like I essentially can't talk to that person anymore because they're weird about trans stuff. I think a lot of LARPers, because it's a very old community, there's a lot of people who've been playing since like the 90s, certain games. There's a lot of old men who don't know how to talk to trans people, and I think that it's weird. Like I've lost friends after I've made them as a trans person, which is weird.
Yeah.
But because a lot of people just expect you to be like, okay, you're trans, don't talk about it ever.
Yeah. It's just like okay, we get it.
Yeah, they don't want you to ever defend your identity, which is weird.
Yeah. Whereas if like you were to question them with something else, I'm sure they'd respond.
Yeah. You know.
But like it's when it comes to people having an issue with those of a trans identity, if that person is cis and they've literally never had to question or think about their gender before, they don't see it as a big deal because it's something that they've always naturally been. So why would they have to learn to think about it? So the fact that they're being told that other people think about it is just beyond them.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to fathom, like, you know, what it's like. I mean, I can't imagine being cis, really. Like, I've always had the same complicated relationship with gender for my entire life. I just didn't have a word for it until I was older, right? So it's just like, I can't imagine just being like, yeah, this is me and I'm cool with it. Like, it's just like, and they don't have to think about it, right? Like, they don't have to worry about you know, getting a name change, getting a gender change. Like, they don't have to worry about any of that stuff. They don't have to worry about correcting people on their pronouns constantly. Most of the time, some cis people do, but it's just like transness is a hard thing to explain to people who are never going to understand it. But I think that what matters in general when someone has a life experience that is very different from yours is to just, unless they're physically harming you or someone else, it's like, just accept them and listen and try to just assume that they know what they're doing, and you know, it costs no money to just respect people and move on. Yeah,
that it comes up again so often, but what's it? Don't be a dick.
Don't be a dick. Yeah, it's like, you know, and it's like I'm an egomaniac. I don't care enough about any other person to be up in their business about fucking their identity. Like, I'm too focused on me. I'm looking in the mirror. I want to know what I'm doing. I don't care what anyone else is doing.
Yeah, I don't have that magic. All right. The strength card. It's another one that defines itself.
Yeah. I have that one on my wall.
Yeah. Strength, power, action, courage. Touching a lion.
Yeah, well, the strength card, it's a beautiful card because it's not, you'd think it would be a strong man or something, but it is a very gentle looking woman, holding a lion and gently petting its face. And it's the strength of having the gentle, caring nature. It essentially sees empathy as a strength, being like, you could kill me, but I'm going to care for you.
Yeah. I love that definition. That's great. Our question for our empathetic strength is another one that we've talked about. Mm-hmm. Should there be an umbrella term for the queer community or non-straight or non-cis folks?
I mean, if people want to add a term, they can add a term. I think, like, it sounds cliche, but I think labels are kind of stupid. And I've seen a lot of, especially back in my day online, people are obsessed with these micro labels and being like, I'm this sexual, I'm this romantic, I'm this, like, everyone is trying to pick apart their gender. And I think that for some people, if it clicks, and that's cool and that works for them. But I think that people can get a little bit too, this is my group and that's your group, when we start to over label everything, right?
Yeah.
So, when I talk about transness, it's like, this is just trans. That's my experience as a trans person. And if there's some crossover between me and how, for example, an intersex person might be living, then that's just something that we two people have in common. And I don't think that there needs to be an umbrella term for everything, just because, like, well, everyone's lived experiences are different in general. I think it's important to highlight marginalized identities, but, like, I don't know. It's like, just whatever makes you comfortable, use that term, because no matter, even just trans, I'm not going to have the same experience as, like, my white trans boy ass is not going to have the same experience as, like, a black trans woman, right? So it's like, even under that umbrella, we can have two completely different lived experiences that have almost nothing in common with each other. When I listen to how a lot of my trans women friends talk about how they discovered the gender, it's so insanely different from how I discovered that I was trans, right? So I think that, umbrella terms are useful, but we don't always need them. Sometimes it's just, how about you connect as a person? Because I think that in the future, we wouldn't even worry about it. We wouldn't even think about sexuality. Like, it'd be like having dyeing your hair a color. It's like, no one's paying attention to that, right? Like your fashion. There's a really great thing in my linguistics textbook that said, gender is not something we are, it's something we do. And that's kind of how I see gender. It's just something that we are doing, and we could just not be doing it in the future. It could just never, in the future, it could not be there anymore. And I think that we need to accept that. I'm not a gender abolitionist. I like my pronouns and I like having them. But I do think that there is a level of performativity to gender that is just, like, in the end, it's just pronouns.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome. I like the umbrella term is just means, like, not straight, not cis, and I understand the need for it, but I also am, like, mad that not mad. I don't know if mad's the right word, but I'm not pleased with the idea that we have to have a word to say we're not like you.
Yeah, and also, like, there's no shared experience between a cis gay man, a lesbian cis woman, a trans man, someone who's intersex, someone who is two-spirit, someone who is, asexual. All of these things are so different in experience that we're not all going to have a shared, the only thing we have in common is that we're dealing with a marginalized identity that has to do with either our gender or our sexuality. Yeah. And that's pretty much the extent of it. It's like women deal with stuff, but they're not under the LGBT acronym, right? Because they're not dealing with that type of marginalization, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that it's just like, I don't know. I labels are for what's the Hot Topic shirt say?
Labels are for soup cans.
Yeah, something like that. Like it's just I think that there's a I think it's nice to have labels when you realize that you're like, oh, that's me. I like having a thing that's me. But I think we're so worried about who's in what club. It's like, I don't care.
Yeah, I think they're useful for language for quick descriptions.
Yeah.
And that's what language is. That's why we have words.
Yeah. Well, it's like you think about bisexual and pansexual. Every single person I've asked this question for, both bi and pan, have given me very different answers. And fundamentally, they're kind of just the same thing, but it's all about what label makes the person feel more happy, right? It's like, oh, I like this label more than the other. And that's pretty much the extent of it.
Yeah, like for me, there is a difference, but that's just because I do perceive gender the way I do. So for me, being bisexual is to be attracted to multiple genders in a different way. Whereas just to see them as different genders. Whereas pansexual is all. Whereas for me, I say pansexual because I'm just I like people. I'll take it.
And that's again, it's like everyone's lived experience affects how they label themselves and how they identify with labels. In the same way that some people say transsexual and not transgender. It's just like, oh, that fits me more and I'm more comfortable with that label.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Our next card is the world.
The world.
All right. So what are neopronouns and why haven't they caught on?
Okay, so neopronouns, there's actually, I think they were originated, there's a thing called Spivak pronouns. There's this mathematician named Michael Spivak, I think. I think it's Michael Spivak, but there's Spivak pronouns, and he created, he wasn't a linguist, but he was just using them in a textbook to use these gender neutral forms, which I think the original ones were a, m, and air. And there was just, again, a lot of people were experimenting. Weirdly enough, in a lot of sci-fi novels, people are experimenting with, Z and these ideas of let's create a new pronoun to be gender neutral. Let's create a third gender pronoun. A lot of people were experimenting in their textbooks because they just wanted to create a pronoun that was for everybody. Or they wanted to create an alien species that only had one gender or something like that, right? And I think they haven't caught on because pronouns, the way that pronouns historically have evolved in English is it has been a process of not addition, but subtraction. So we used to have about 4 different forms of you. So we had thy, we had thee and thou, and then we had you and ye. And now all of those are just you. So if you had thou, that was you individual, and then ye or you was you plural people. So you was actually originally the plural form of you. You would say thou or thee if you're talking about the person. Thou was thou art beautiful. That was you, and then if you were the subject, and then thee was if you were the object. So I give it to thee. So there's subject, object, and then we had the same thing with ye and you. So subject, ye, I give it to ye, ye are whatever, and then you was I give it to you. So it's the same type of language rules of you had your subject, object. We don't have that anymore within those pronouns. Now we literally just use you, which is very fun. So we have we keep taking away words. So English gets simplified by people removing stuff and just using a single term. And I think that when it comes to pronouns, they aren't particle words, I don't think. So particle words are these called particle words? I need to study on this. But it's essentially words that we don't tend to have new ones. So stuff like you and stuff like to, the, right? Those types of words have kind of just been the same, and we don't tend to have more of them. So I think that neopronouns haven't caught on for a lot of people just because historically we haven't really ever made a new pronoun. It's been a process of subtraction rather than addition. We've always just simplified things. So we're like, oh, get rid of that. We don't need that. We don't need that.
So I think that's why people have been trying to like get neopronouns on since like the 70s. There's been a lot of different versions of different types of pronouns that people keep pushing for. And I know people that go by neopronouns, and I think they're cool. I think that there's it is a little bit more difficult because it's not a word that people know. And when it comes to pronouns, those are like some of the first words we learn, and then we just use the same ones for our entire lives, right?
Yeah.
So it's a little bit harder for people to put that into their, vocabulary. But like other words, we learn new words every day, and you can use them. But I think that it's just been harder to get people to catch on just because of the fact that pronouns in the English language have only ever been subtracted and simplified rather than added to.
Yeah.
But I still think it's very cool, and I think that neopronouns are fun. I think most of the people I know who use neopronouns tend to use them more online because it's easier to get people to use them in text-based environments. I always have to tell some of my friends who use neopronouns because they'll write it down. And I always am like, how do you pronounce that? They never put a pronunciation guide, and I'm like, uh-oh. Because for the longest time, I didn't know how, because it's Z in here, and I did not know how that was. I was like, H-I-R, that just looks like her. How do I say this?
Yeah. Yeah, that was one that got me for a while, too.
So I think everyone who uses neopronouns needs to also learn the phonetic alphabet so that they can write how to pronounce it.
Perfect. All right, now we have one spread left. 5 more questions.
5 more.
Mm-hmm. All right, say when.
Do that now. When?
All right. So I have 1 card left because I messed up somehow.
Well, there's 22 major arcana.
Oh my gosh, I had a plan and I just didn't do it. Anyway, I'm just gonna put the devil beside here.
Just use the rest of them.
Sorry?
But just use the rest of them.
Yeah, it's fine.
We're not doing actual tarot readings here.
I know, that's why I just put it beside it. It's fine.
Yeah.
Like I was getting so caught up, like, oh no, I'm putting it in the wrong order. No, it's fine. What, is Wes gonna judge me?
Yeah, no, I'm not. I don't care.
Good, I'm glad. All right, so our card number 1 is the Sun.
The Sun.
Mm-hmm. So it represents material happiness. So I think the question is, what does it mean to pass?
Oh God. I mean, passing is a for a lot of people it's like a safety thing. It just means that no one's gonna look at you and be like, that's a trans person. That's pretty much all it is. You just essentially pass as the gender that you identify as, in terms that people just assume that you're a cis person. It doesn't mean people who are passing and are presenting as their like birth assigned gender. That's just being in the closet. Passing specifically means like I identify as this, and to most people in society, I just look like that, and no one bats an eye at me. It's a complicated thing because there's a level of privilege that you can get from being a passing person, because you don't have to deal with harassment a lot of the time. You still deal with that. It's usually just a bit more interpersonal relationships rather than like straight harassment.
Yeah.
It can be quite frustrating. A lot of trans people, the goal is to pass. I mean, that used to be back in the day. The goal was just like, okay, I'm gonna go on hormones. I'm gonna move to a place where no one knows me, and I'm just gonna pass and live my life, and no one will know I'm trans. Like that was the goal for most people, and it's still the goal for some people now. It's a lot of people, they just want to, not be visibly. I mean, even me, like I don't. I would love to be gendered correctly. That would be nice. But I think that it's healthy for people to, realize that there's only so much they can do about how they look. And I think that, it's also, I think that if it's a safety thing, I understand where people are coming from. But I think if you focus too much on passing, you can just make yourself like extremely depressed.
Yeah, that's a similar relationship I have to passing, where it's just like, for me, there's nothing that I can pass as, so I have to just
like a lot of non-binary people, you're right, like there's nothing to pass for.
Yeah, it's like the option is dress how I want because fuck them, or just dress as confusing as possible so people have no choice but to they me.
Yeah, like it's like I know a lot of non-binary people just try to go like the full androgyny route of being like, okay, I need to look like both so that people will not know.
Yeah.
So it is kind of a complicated term. I usually when people are talking about it in a safety way, like I get where they're coming from. I know a lot of people like kind of need to pass or else they will get assaulted on the streets.
Yeah.
So I get where people are coming from. But it's just like, I'm like, I only just want my pronouns to be used by strangers sometimes.
Yeah, and that's like a form of like gender euphoria, and that's totally worth a rush.
Yeah, it's nice getting validated every once in a while, but it's not, my life's not ruined if I don't, look a certain way. When I started hormones, my doctor was saying like, okay, now just so you know, like this isn't like a fix-all. You're not gonna just look. You still have your biology, and sometimes hormones make you look a certain way. And I come from a long line of very like effeminate looking men who don't have a lot of facial hair. So it's like, okay, well, I'm probably not going to look like, Mr. like extremely cis dude. I'm just going to look like me, but my voice is going to get lower.
Yeah. Whereas like, I know if I were to take tea, I would probably get very fluffy.
Well, you're Italian, so.
Yeah. And my dad's like family's really hairy too. So it's just like, I would just lose.
Yeah, I'm from a very not hairy family.
Both sides of my family are hairy. I currently have blonde leg hair that I haven't shaved in like 3 years, and you cannot tell. I'm good. All right. So our next card is the Lovers.
Ooh.
So it's another one that explains itself. Do you want to do this definition?
Yeah, I mean, the Lovers it can be read a couple different ways. I don't always see it as such a positive card. It's the joining of two people, but can also mean a little bit of codependency. So that can be a problem in that area too. The Lovers tend to be quite focused on each other rather than anything else. So while it is a good card if you're looking for like the love reading, it can be a little bit of a, you're hyper focusing on another person kind of card. But overall, it's love and romance and infatuation.
And trials to overcome.
Yeah, it's just like there's this new event that's happening between you and another person.
Yeah. Awesome. I love the Lovers card because it's more than just like, you're going to get some.
Yeah, to love. Like, I think the Two of Cups is probably a better card to get for a romance rating rather than.
Or the Three of Swords is a good one too.
Three of Swords?
It's the polyamory card.
Oh yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
It's become one of my favorites, so I placed it on the thing as the display because I was talking about it recently, and the person I was talking about is going to watch the video and is going to go, "Ha!" And now I'm talking about it on the video, so it's going to be less funny.
I mean, I always thought the Three of Swords is like a heartbreak card, ain't it?
It's one of those like it has many. Oh gosh, I just did this. It has multiple things. It's not just heartbreak, but it's like different opportunities and alternate love.
That must be the reverse form.
That's why I call it the polyamory card, because I got it when I did a lovers reading the other day.
Yeah.
And I got it for the question.
Oh, okay.
So
I
it was
for that placement, yeah.
Yeah, it was a very suitable thing. And then because it has like the 3 swords, and I was just like because of my situation, and I was just like, wow, it's me. I love when that happens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But anyway, the lover's question. All right. So, what is the difference between gender identity and sexuality, and why are they often grouped together?
I think because gender and sex is so, ingrained in our heads. It's like, oh, men are with women and women are with men, and that's just how it is. So that when most trans people, when they come out, everyone just kind of immediately assumes that they must also be like a straight person in terms of the fact that they must be attracted to their the opposite gender within their trans identity, but like the same sex relationship, and they think that it's like, oh, this is them just trying to validate like a heteronormative thing, which is completely, incorrect, just due to the fact that there's a lot of gay trans people out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think just because we're so obsessed with biology and the concept of sex is just to reproduce, which like it is, but people do it for fun all the time, and that doesn't really have anything to do with it. We just naturally are inclined to, sex is a thing that happens in our species. I think people just heteronormativity is like deep ingrained in everyone's heads. Like I to this day, despite the fact that I look the way that I look and I act the way that I act, like I constantly get hit on by women, just assuming that everyone just must assume that I must be into women, and it's just never been a thing in my life really. But it's like people are like, oh, you're trans, you must also be like bi or something. That's another weird thing. People will assume that if you're trans, you just automatically must be okay with everything, which is not true. We're attracted to what we're attracted to, and that really has nothing to do with our gender identity.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's complicated. I think that sexuality, a lot of people come into their sexuality after they come out, just because a lot of people, again, like when I've been attracted to men my whole life, but it's just like I spent a lot of my life not being comfortable with that attraction because it didn't feel right. And then once I came out as trans, it was like, okay, I like men. I just like men when I am also a man, and I don't have to think about a heterosexual relationship. Like I get more uncomfortable being mistaken for my boyfriend's girlfriend than if any other regular, like misgendering. Like
Yeah.
other regular misgendering, like whatever, like, but when I'm mistaken for a woman in a heterosexual relationship, it's why I get so frustrated when people are like, oh, I saw a straight couple at Pride. And I'm like, you don't know what either of those people identifies as, so just shut up.
Yeah.
Because I think about it and I'm like, I've probably been that person who just, I'm like sitting here in my like gay trans relationship and people just assume that this is like a heterosexual couple. And that fucking frustrates me.
Yeah, it's something I've been frustrated by as well. Just like whenever I'm in a relationship with someone who passes as a man or presents as a man, I just like am immediately looked at as the girlfriend. I'm immediately in a cis het relationship, and it's so, like as you said, it's so uncomfortable because it's just like it's like a double whammy of just like neither of your assumptions are right.
Yeah, and it's like even with like cis bi people, it's like if they're in a hetero relationship, it's like their identity is almost like completely erased, and they don't feel like they're allowed to, express themselves when they're in like a monogamous relationship, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know so many people who have come out to me as like pan or bi, but they're in a straight passing relationship that they feel will just be their like monogamous end all, so they don't feel the need to come out. And I'm just like, come out. Like, not only do we need more, like the representation needs to be there, other people need to know it's okay. Even if you coming out doesn't affect your life, it might impact someone else's.
Yeah, I think it's really important. And I think it's important to like, not, I've seen like other people who are within the LGBT community just being like, oh, like they're just saying that they're bi for like whatever when they're in a het relationship, and I'm like, shut up, like you don't know their shit, and you're not their friend, and you're not their mom, so like what are you on about?
Also, why does it really matter? It's just this unnecessary gatekeeping.
Yeah, I also like I don't care who people are attracted to. Like it just does not matter to me, and I've never cared. I don't care who like it's just like if someone says that they're bi, I'm just like, okay, I just assume they're bi. Like it's like I've seen a lot of people kind of aggressively trying to like you have to hit mark A, B, and C in order to qualify as this, and it's just like what? Like it's in some areas I get it, but when it comes to like someone trying to like figure out their sexuality, it's just like you don't know their life, and also you shouldn't have is a single gay person no longer gay because he's not dating someone, right? Like it's just like you shouldn't have to validate your sexuality by like performing in a relationship. Really, it's weird. It's like no.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so now we have the magician.
The magician.
Magician. Do you want to do this definition?
Yeah, the magician. He's. I like the magician. He's a little bit of a. Has the mystique to him, and it usually means that there's a little bit of hidden trickery going on. But he does represent a level of mystique and disillusion that can be quite fantastical and fun sometimes, but can also be quite dangerous.
Yeah. So that being said, what is something that caught you off guard or that you didn't expect to interact or occur in regard to your transition? Like what's something that just like what's a surprise experience you had that you weren't expecting?
Let's see. I mean, all my hormone stuff was like they told me it was gonna happen, so I wasn't really surprised. That surprised me. The amount of cis dudes that are very chill about trans dudes. Like I have so many cis, a lot of straight like male friends. In fact, like I was afraid as when I was not presenting as a man, I didn't actually have any, I'm going to say any, like barely, no, I had a couple, but like barely any cis male friends, right? And after I came out, like I was worried that I wouldn't fit in male spaces. And, I gained so many like cis male friendships that many of them were straight men. Or I don't know. I don't ask people about their sexuality, so I have so many friends who I literally don't know their sexuality because I've never asked because I don't care. But it's like I have a lot of male friends that I have very nice, close, caring, loving friendships with, and I think that people would be surprised to find out that yes, men can have like nice, wholesome relationships. Because I feel like a lot of people don't seem to think that can happen. So I think that was probably the most shocking is going from a place where I had almost no male friends, going into second year university, and I started making a couple of male friends, and this is when I was out as genderqueer, and then being a trans dude and suddenly gaining a lot of the support from trans men, not just trans men, but like cis men too, was like it was nice. It was like a very nice experience, and I've had so many wonderful, validating moments with my male friends.
That's amazing. I like even though I know you have these friends, I'm still like surprised. I'm like, oh wow. I like physically know these people and I'm still surprised by them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's why I'm a step away from being that not all men kind of person, because I have so many good male friendships, as a trans dude, and sometimes when I see people making these like fuck men posts, like I feel a little twinge of like, No, that's not true.
Yeah.
But like, I get where they're coming from.
Yeah, like I say my like all guys suck and like shit like that, but I know hashtag not all men.
Yeah, like it's like I think there's a level of criticizing socialized masculinity versus just saying like all men be like this.
Yeah, it's like I could use all of the words to like explain how too many men fall into this category and display this array, and or I can just be like, ah, man, men. And sometimes that's all I have time for. All right. So our next card is temperance.
Temperance.
So accommodation, moderation, frugality. Yeah. So focusing on the moderation aspect, how would you describe the difference between cross-dressing, drag, and being trans?
Well, I mean, two of those is just fashion, right? So clothing has nothing to do with gender. It does to an extent in terms of we've socialized a lot of different clothing to be assigned to certain genders, but even that is that gap is slowly closing. I would just say like transness has nothing to do with your clothes. It has nothing to do with your features. It has nothing to do with your hair or your hormones or anything. It just has to do with how you like to be identified as. And some people use clothes to create context clues, but I know a lot of trans women lesbians that just wear the same shit that I wear, and it's just like jeans and a t-shirt and all day. And I know many trans dudes that wear makeup and like to be effeminate, me, but like like I just say that clothes has nothing to do with gender, and I think people need to kind of realize that. Cross-dressing is just it's like playing pretend. It's LARPing as another gender, and then when you take that off, thing with drag, when you take off the drag, if you are a man underneath, then you are a man after you take off the drag, and if you're a woman after you take off the drag, then you're a woman. And drag is it's it's clownery. You are putting on a performance of a character, of a caricature of womanhood, of a caricature of manhood, or somewhere in between. And it's not who you are. It's a performance, and then you take off the makeup, and then you're whoever you are underneath.
Yeah, awesome. Yep, I agree.
That's all I got.
Yeah, very, very good. A+. All right, our next card is oh gosh, okay, so this is one I've literally, every time I've ever done a reading for someone and I've gotten it, I've just been like, ah, yes, number 5. I'm going to say it out loud for the first time in my probable adult life, if not entire life. Hierophant. Hierophant?
The Hierophant, I think. I always said it that way.
That's okay. Yeah, the Hierophant. So it's the commitment card.
Yeah.
So in regards to transition, what is the difference between a social transition, a legal transition, and a medical transition?
Okay. Social transition is probably the easiest one. That's just saying, hey, everybody, I'm going by this name and these pronouns now. Please refer to me as such. And you can that's when you start dressing a certain way if you want to dress a certain way, and you usually tell your friends and your coworkers or whoever. What was the second one?
Legal.
Legal. Okay. Legal is just the boring stuff. That's changing your name, changing your gender. I've only done one of those things just because gender is on literally none of my ID, so I have not cared enough to get my legal sex changed because it's not. I got it changed on my passport because I asked them to. I was like, hey, can you do this? They're like, yeah. I was like, that was easy shit. I changed my name because that was more important to me. And It's easy as shit in Canada. I know it's a lot harder in the States. People like, and I don't know if it's in every state because every state has different laws, but I'll see my friends being like, I have to go to court to get my name legally changed. And I was like, what? Like crazy shit. And I'm just like, I just sent in some papers and then they mailed me back a birth certificate and I never thought about it ever again, right?
Yeah.
So I'm very lucky to live in the country that I live in where they were just like, okay, sure. Like I didn't have to write an essay. I didn't have to talk to anybody. I was like, I am trans, I'm changing my name. And they're like, okay. And then a medical one is probably the hardest. That's when you do hormonal transition. That's when you get surgeries, gender affirming surgeries, previously known as your sex change operation, which is incorrect, but is very fun to say. I'm getting my sex changed, like as if it's a tire. That's fun. So it's like people will go through like different types of surgery. Both either you can get facial surgery. A lot of trans women get facial feminization surgery, so that cuts down a lot of bone there. You can either get breasts given or removed, and then there's bottom surgery, which is the most intense of them. And I know almost all my trans friends do not have this surgery because it's hard and it's also very expensive.
Yeah.
And it's also the part of your body that the least amount of people see. So it's on the back burner for me. I know for other people it's not, but it tends to be like the last on the list of shit to get done.
Yeah, I think that would depend on what someone's focus is. Just because, like, I know I have a friend who, like her main focus is she just wants it gone.
Yeah,
she hates it. It's her least favorite thing about herself. Like everything else, she's just like, I can cope with, I can deal with it, but I just want this to go away.
Yeah, that definitely has more to do with like your mental dysphoria, because it's like that's just like it's entirely between you and yourself, and it's just like I hate this and I see this and yet I hate it. I think that's one of the weirdest things about transness is certain things that like literally no one else is noticing about you that you notice and you care about, and it is just stressing. I think that's one of the more frustrating things is being like, why do I care about this? No one else notices this, but I care.
Yeah, and that is definitely just like a part of dysphoria and even like body dysmorphia, which is we discussed it a few episodes ago with Joelle. We were discussing the difference between dysmorphia and dysphoria and how a lot of the time for trans people they can go hand in hand.
Yeah, it's very rare that you will, because dysphoria, it's like you're not going to be like, well, I look great, but I'm very dysphoric. Like it's like you will feel ugly as well as feeling very gender dysphoric, right? So it is a very tight locked Venn diagram of issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So we have one question left.
One more question.
The devil.
The devil, my favorite boy.
Mm-hmm. All right. So focusing on the extraordinary efforts and force of the devil. How do gendered languages such as Spanish work for people who don't identify as masculine or feminine?
Well, that is a tricky thing that's been going on. I know for Spanish speakers, people have started using X as that. I think it said Ix, and you just use that as the ending of the word. Because in Romance-based languages, such as like you'll have stuff like French and Italian and Spanish, and like I have a friend who's Italian and also non-binary, and I'm always like, how do you work with that? And they're like, I just learned English. Like, oh, of course. But people have been trying to have different interpretations within their language. It's very tricky though, because Romance-based languages, they gender literally everything. So if you're talking about, like in Spanish, I know if you're talking about your neighbor, you will clarify if it is your neighbora or your what is it, neighboro? I can't remember. I took Spanish for like 1 year, but you'll have like, well, professor, profesora, professor, right? You'll have all these different male professor, female professor, male neighbor, female neighbor. So it is, people have been using X, and I know in Spanish, so you'll have people say Latinx. Or, you know, other words will just say like a professor, I think would be professorix, which sounds very cool. But I know that different people have been trying different things. I know X right now is the, it might be said a different way. I'm just reading it as X because it's online. Yeah. People need to learn the phonetic alphabet, I swear to God. But I know that there's a thing in French that was like, there's il and l, and people have been using like lil, or what was it? It was like ale or something. There's all these different types of like gender neutral forms, but it's a little bit more tough because the gender is so heavily you know, ingrained in their language, and that's kind of why language and gender is so, you know, tight knit, is because, you know, language affects how we see gender, it affects how we interact with it. And it's why that, you know, in English we have certain things around gender that, you know, someone who's living in you know, France would not have the same understanding as someone who's a natural French speaker, or even someone who is, you know, Japanese speaker would have a different understanding of gender, because it's all just, we use words to clarify the things that we see in life, and everyone describes things in different ways. You can see that in the fact that there's, you know, different colors are said, you know, you'll see different words for different colors. We clarify the difference between pink and red, but in other languages they don't do that at all, right? So down to all these other things, it just depends on how hard you're looking at something, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I always found the color thing so interesting when I found out, like, just like for some people, light blue is a completely different color, and for some people, blue is
in Russian. In Japanese, blue and green was the same word for a really long time until they clarified the difference between the two.
Oh yeah, that's why we have like, I think it was like that for us too, because like that's why we have like the green sea.
Yes, the blue actually was one of the last colors that we had a word for. We originally in written language all over the world, the first colors that we actually had words for were black, white, and red. Red, obviously, because blood, and like we had to have a coordination with that as a danger symbol. But everything else was like white sky, dark sea. Like it was just light, dark, red.
Yeah.
And then we started clarifying more colors. I think we had green next. But blue was one of the last ones because it wasn't like important enough. There was not anything in life that made us have to be like clarify that it was blue. So it was only when we started thinking about other things that we started being like, I guess we'll have a word for that too. But it was one of the last colors that, even though we've had the same eyes as Homo sapiens, we've had the exact same eyes, the exact same features, and we have perceived the world in the exact same way. The way that we describe it has been drastically different throughout the years of us being around. So I think that, you know, naturally, obviously, our understanding of gender is going to change, just because it was weirdly easier to be a trans dude back in the day, because if you just wore men's clothing, people are like, oh, okay, man, because they wouldn't even fathom that a woman would wear that.
Yeah.
So it's somehow gender rules made it a little bit easier for some trans people.
Interesting. All right, so those are our set of questions. Do you have any facts or interesting things about linguistics or gender that we haven't touched on?
Yes. I will say that a lot of people, I was saying at the beginning that I was talking about the concept of birth sex and the idea of having a birth sex. And those things, we have traits, and those traits are wordless. And I think that people will still say stuff like, oh, well, you're biologically female. But it's like, that is just the word that you've used to clarify a group of average features that someone has. But that doesn't mean female. That just means that someone has that trait. And the word for that could change overnight.
Yeah.
So I think that people need to start realizing that a lot of what we understand about gender and sex is just purely based on us categorizing stuff into words. And it is natural for those words to evolve and include more people. So if someone says, I am a trans male, I remember I had someone they were like, oh, well, male means this, and you're still female, you're just, and it was someone who I was friends with, and I was like, no, I mean, female is so tied in with the idea of woman, you can't separate that anymore. You can't say, oh, well, you're a man, but you're female. It's just, those words don't mean what you are saying they mean. And it's just a little bit silly to say that way. But it's not lying about your biology to say that you're something else. It's just a word that is describing a trait. And the thing is, science is wordless. Science is just facts that we have to put words onto. But it doesn't mean anything. The word, grammar changes and words change. It's like, it's normal. And I think that if, we're going to get anywhere in life, you can either be a baby and cry every time words change, or just accept the fact that language naturally just keeps going forward. And like, look at Old English, go read Beowulf and then complain to me about how language is changing. Like, that's the same language, that's English. And so many kids complain about how they can't understand Shakespeare in high school, and I'm like, well, that's English too. Like, and that's not even technically that long ago in human history. So language naturally changes, and I think it's like our job to change with it, and to ever make a fuss about it, it's just like, you're just going to be left behind in the dust.
Yeah, definitely. We have to grow and never stop learning, because the world keeps moving. It doesn't end when we're 18.
Yeah, and it's like, the world's not going to stop. Like, you're just going to get more confused. You're going to be that old person who never picked up a computer, and now it's too late for them.
Yeah.
Learn while it's new, or else you're going to be more confused in 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the information's there. It's easily accessible. We just shared a lot of it.
It's amazing the access of information that we have nowadays. Like, you can look up anything. Like, I know more. We know more shit about everything by not going to school than like any human ever has. Like, even I think about it, I'm like, if I wanted to know a fact about like rhinoceroses, I can just Google it and learn it in 2 seconds. Back in the day, you'd have to go to the library, hope that they had a book on that species of animal that you would never seen in your entire life. And it's just like, maybe they'll have a bad art of it that's not accurate. Like, it's just like, we have so much access to information, and people keep refusing to use it.
Yeah, they'd rather like use more time just like playing Bingo Blitz, and like, no offense to Bingo Blitz, but
yeah, like, turn your phone off and open another thing on your phone, and read some articles. It's fun. Yeah. Learning is fun. I love learning about other stuff, because I'm fascinated by how other people live their lives. I think it's important to want to know how other people live their lives, because it's like, otherwise you're just going to be a jackass who thinks everyone lives like you, and it's like, that's just not a fact.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there was a play I was in a few years ago. I was a spirit guide, and I had a line that was, "Never stop learning. That's what a true explorer does."
Ah.
I love that line so much, because it's like everyone, you have to be life's explorer, and it just stuck with me.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good motto. It's it's good to be curious. I think that the most like ignorant people in the world are ignorant because they just don't care about how another person might be living their life.
Yeah,
and for me, it's like, you got to be the opposite of a bigot. You got to be so fascinated by everyone that you just are like, wow, that's so cool that you live that way, and that you identify that way, and that you present yourself and express yourself that way. Because it's like, in the end, like, if someone is expressing themselves in a way that I find different, or a way that I've never seen before, it's like, who cares? Like, it's cool. It's cool that someone can express themselves in a way that is different, because like, otherwise life would be very boring.
Yeah, we have to be multiple shades, not just black and white.
Yeah, although I only dress in black and white. But...
yeah, you have different shades of black, though.
Yeah, I have gray in there somewhere.
Exactly. And you have that one shirt that's black and white and has a red heart on it.
Yeah, my friend gave that to me.
It's your color pop. I love it.
I do like red. Yeah, that's my one color. I stuck with the basics: red, black, and white.
What else?
I perceive.
All right. So, do we have anything else to add, or shall we call this a show?
I think this is a good. It's two and a quarter hours.
I think that's a good place to end it. All right, everyone. This has been Serious and Sober with Wes Cunningham Closs. Thank you, everyone, so much for tuning in. Whether you've been here the whole time, tune out, or you're watching it a week from now, you're amazing. And I love that you are taking the time to learn. Whether or not all this information is completely new to you, it's still amazing that you're reaching out for it. I see and appreciate you. And if you want to enjoy more Serious and Sober, follow Rae Lockdust Comedy, and I will continue posting these videos until the world runs out of issues to be serious about. Thank you all so much, and have a